Hi there. Thanks very much for checking my YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it, and checking out my live section, which is wonderful. So, what I like to do here is just it's like a 30-minute little chit chat. We talk about what's been going on with me and Turo, and we kind of get into a couple little topics as far as what we've been up to and things along that line. So today we got some little stuff that's showed up. We've got a membership package from CAA, which is the Canadian Automotive Association. What I did is I subscribed to this when I had my first client go out. I thought to myself, well, I should add something that's a little added value to the vehicle in the event of an issue should arise. And I thought, well, CAA is a pretty good insurance program for things along the lines of they forgot to turn the lights off, or a flat tire occurred, or things along that line, or they need a boost in the morning. Again, no fault of the vehicle or no real issues associated with problems as they come about, and kind of Turo related items. But CA covers so much more than what I think the Turo roadside assistance package covers. So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to add that onto my vehicle, not just for their sense of, security and safety, and their sense of a, happy feeling as far as getting behind the wheel when they see that little CEA sticker. They're going to go, okay, well, there's also a contact number, and they're going to go through and say, okay, well, if I lock my keys in the car, run out of gas, or if I've got issues with can't find a map or things along that line, there's resources there from CA to go to, which is great. Also offers a 3-cent discount on fuel. That's through Shell. I don't think that's a big feature, but it's a nice one for me to have. So I thought, well, that's a nice little item right there. Save a few pennies. A few pennies here, a few pennies there. Adds up. They sent me on a little welcome letter, which is very nice. And they kind of just give you an overview of what's available along with the little CAA card. So I think that's nice. That'll go in the glove box. Let's see. So you get to save on dining and a few other little items, shopping, entertainment, 200 trusted partners. Wow. So again, I'm sure there's going to be special offers emailed out and say, hey, good news, this is a deal of the month or something along that line. So that's a moot point, but something that might come up. I can speak to a general practitioner. They give me a $75 credit for that. And you would think that if you're outside Canada, you keep hearing about, oh, well, they have free healthcare, and we do. The dilemma is that actually talking to a doctor is very difficult. So to try and find one, it's like needle in a haystack. So usually you end up going into a clinic, and you never really see the same one again. And it's one of those things where you kind of go, if you had a long-term issue, you've got to line up essentially or a queue to actually go to talk to an actual practitioner. So it's one of those things. It's just the way the system works here. If you're from anywhere else in the world, so I've been told, our healthcare system, the fact that it's free is amazing, which it isn't. We pay into it as part of our taxes. And if you saw what we pay in taxes, you'd go, oh, that probably needs to get audited. In all likelihood, it does, right? So I don't want to get into that because it's political. But anyways, we get a $75 credit to talk to a doctor online, which is spectacular. Incidentally, I've used AI. ChatGTP gives pretty good medical advice. Just tell it to act as if it's a good doctor, not like a fictional character where you're all of a sudden putting leeches on. But anyways, again, I'm going off a little rant. Exclusive membership, savings to insurance, 10% off if you bundle with your home policy and your auto policy. It's a nice pitch. It's kind of a nice little item there if you've got that. Let's see. Vacation packages, hotel stays, things along that line. So again, a CA membership is handy for that. Looks like passport photos. So that's kind of a cool little item there. You got to pay $8.95 for passport photos, but they probably look amazing, right? So no problem there. So that's my CA membership. I've had CA in the past on other cars. I've used them for things like lockout, get the keys locked in. I've had issues where it's gone into a ditch and it's nothing major, like you didn't roll the car or cause any major problems. Up here, you get a little black ice or you get a little bad weather. It's very easy to put a car uncontrollably into a side ditch. And the side ditches are about maybe 2 feet deep. They're just enough to make your car not go anywhere. So they don't usually cause any damage. It's one of those things that are just an annoyance. And if you are a new Canadian, you're probably going to do that once or twice. And they send up a nice little brochure. And I will probably put that front and center in my car or I might make a copy of it. Because it does give you the listings of the top 10 things that people use CAA membership for. So that would be handy. So again, flat tire service, been there, happens. Towing service, I got the Plus package. I was thinking the Gold, but the Plus is so close. And I'm in an area that is generally populated. So to go to a garage, it's not 320 kilometers. It's reasonably close. And I thought the Plus was reasonable. I looked at the idea of doing the Canadian Tire membership. The drawback with the Canadian Tire membership is they tow you to a Canadian Tire store. As a Canadian, if you're out there, you probably have an opinion of the Canadian Tire store and their service centers. So because they've been around forever and a day, some are very good and some are very, very bad. So it's one of those things where, if you're out there and you're shopping, you're going, well, which one's the better deal? Because I did do the cross check. The Canadian Tire one is cheaper. It is by a few bucks. The dilemma is that you're locked into that retailer. I don't think it has some of the features here that maybe you would use that I don't use. Like I don't think they do the 3 cent on gas, which is kind of nice if you've got a Shell station that's local. Roadside services, lockout, battery service. The battery one's a big one. So if you get to about minus 20 in our region, which happens, and you've got a battery that's on a 3-year or a 4-year cycle, that minus 20 is the point where that battery may not get the car turned over. Then you throw in the fact that perhaps you've got an older car where maybe the compression is down a little bit. I'm not saying done, but just a little. You've got maybe a fuel pump that's not on its way out, but it's seasoned a little bit, right? So that's where you can have a problem where you need to get a boost, and that's a nice feature there. Emergency gas delivery. Again, you're not familiar with the vehicle. You're a Turo driver. You're out with your kids, they're screaming in the back. You're hauling along, filled up with a tank of gas earlier, but you didn't notice the flashing red light. Next thing you know, you're on the side of the 401 and you're out of gas, which one of those things I'm going to assume I've never experienced, but I'm pretty sure it's happened. Probably why they marked it as number 3. So just something to be aware of. Looks like I get a CA magazine and a mobile app and a whole bunch of stuff. So if you're a Turo host out there and you're trying to add some value to your vehicle without it being something that could walk out of the vehicle or cause issues, things that I like as a CA membership as a little bonus and just kind of a little umbrella to say, hey, you've got a little additional coverage in the event of, not that we're expecting it, but it could happen. And that's nice if you're traveling, if you are a tourist, which seems to be I've had one. And if you're someone who's second year in Canada, you're finally getting into a car to do a little runabout, and you kind of go, oh, never heard of CAA. Great item if you're stuck in the middle of a mall parking lot and you've got a flat tire. You can go, oh, I'm not going to call Keith, which you can. It'd be fine. But you'd call the CAA number that's right there, and they'd come by and throw some air in the tire and get you going, which is, in my mind, a bonus for me and a bonus for them. That membership, I think, was about $120. There was a discount code in there as well. So I'm not going to put the discount code up, but I would suggest that you just Google discount code for CA membership. A bunch of them came up. It wasn't a big issue from that standpoint. So that's easy to come by, that $20 discount. So again, it brought it down like $109. So depending on the vehicle you have, if you were running a lower riding car, like a sports car, I would probably go with the Gold, mainly because they could provide a flatbed and you could make that really apparent. Say, hey, you know what, this thing has got 2 inches of ground clearance. It can't go onto a standard tow truck, so you can kind of make that little statement and say, okay, let's take care of that. If you're running a standard car, I'd say just go with the plus. If you're in the GTA or Southern Ontario, there's more than enough kilometers there to get you to a shop or to get it back home, which is kind of the ideal situation. And you have control. So in other words, if you said, you know what, I checked the Google and or asked the AI, what's the most rated, 5-star independent shop, and if they come up and say, hey, there's a Meineke store in Kitchener that's pretty good, and they've got all good comments, and they seem to be pretty legitimate, and you look at that and you kind of go, oh, well, that's a good place to go. If I want a place that I might be paying full pop for, might as well get a place that's honest and legitimate. And that's one of the things I look at if I've got a problem. The other one is with that gold package, it's not a bad item if you have an RV or additional items that you want to add into it. So that's something to think about from that standpoint. So that's my CAA membership little overview. I'd say thumbs up. I spent time in Alberta. I used that a lot because at the time I was driving a 1984. It was a used car, very used car. So it was what it was, but it had the rotary in it. So it was the Mazda RX-7, which was a fun phase of my life. So it was good times. But I ran that car right through an Alberta winter. Actually, I ran it through 2 Alberta winters. And amazingly enough, the rotary engine in a Mazda RX-7, if you aren't aware of it, has a little addition to it where you put starter fluid into it. And then when you hit this is going to date me a little bit, but when you pull your choke out and then you pump your gas, I think it was 3 times, it would shoot a little starter fluid into the rotary engine to make it crank. And it was one of those things that my car had the Apex seals on it that were they were problematic. So they did create a seal, but sometimes it wouldn't. So every once in a while you get a little pop in the back of probably killing dolphins with the environment. Who knows? But it is throw a little flame sometimes out the back on a cold winter day. And it wasn't like consistent, like it wasn't like 40 feet out, but it was enough where if I was starting it up in the parking lot, the neighbor would go, hey, your car does a little boop, which was kind of fun. So again, that was an 84 RX-7. I should probably get into a conversation sometime about cars that I've had in the past that were fascinating and fun. The RX-7, I've had a couple of them because what happens, they would roll into the shop. I'm going off on a tangent. So anyways, I'm going to continue. But they would come to the shop and they'd always have about 130, 140,000 kilometers. And most shops didn't want to touch them because the rotary engine was an abstract item, like opening up a transmission. Most shops just don't do transmission service because the gearing and everything is such a specialized trade that you kind of just go take it to a transmission shop. Rotary engines were very similar. You had very few technicians that were properly trained on it, or very few that would actually venture into doing a rotary seal or even doing basic maintenance, because it used to be a slippery slope to getting into having to do seals and gaskets. And it was kind of a normal little thing with that. But they would come in and it'd always be that little, oh, it has 120,000 kilometers on it. It's been a daily driver, and usually they're beaten to bits. Back in the day, they were. And you throw in a little bit of road salt, and you throw in maybe a collision or two, because that's what happens with the rear-wheel drive in the middle of winter. You could pick these things up really cheap. Like one of those things where, again, I'm going to sound like an old man. You could buy them for under $1,000 all day long, and you could piece together a decent one, which is what I did back in the day when I was kind of getting into a trade. And they'd be like, okay, well, I'll take that off your hands. And most people kind of go, thank God it's gone, right? Because they usually were finicky and they required a lot of little work. The GLS, which I had for a little while, the SE, GLS SE, had a fuel injection system to it. So it kind of resolved a lot of issues. Their product became better over time. They still have Apex problems like the seals and a few other little items. But again, I digress. That was my rant, or not my rant, but my little move down memory lane with CAA, because I got to know them fairly frequently, to the point where the tow driver that was kind of the local region would go, hey, how you doing today? Are you calling me? Because we'd bump into each other going in and out of the gas station, or in Alberta, you'd have one, at least in Edmonton, you had one grocery store that would give you a discount on gas, but they'd give you the discount when you bought the food. So you'd go and you spend $100 on groceries, and you get yourself, I think it was at the time, it was close to $10 in a gift certificate, like on the receipt that you could go and cash in on fuel. So it was one of those regular things where you'd always bump into everybody because everybody went there, because it was one of those things where you're buying groceries anyways, and the groceries weren't overpriced. They weren't marked up to reflect that, but they had a gas station as part of their franchise, and you'd go and you'd take that little receipt and go, well, I got myself $7 worth of fuel today on credit with the food that I purchased. And that's I'd always bump into them there. It'd always be a funny little conversation, like, hey, did you need a boost? Yeah. Which was the rotary always had a new battery in it, but for whatever reason, when it got cold, like if it sat for 3 or 4 days, it just didn't want to go. So you'd have to really give it a good charge. But anyways, let's get off that one. Well, maybe we'll do a whole slew of stories of crazy cars Keith has owned, or stories from the grave. Where are they now? We might do that. So my Amazon package finally arrived, which we've been talking about, I think, off and on, kind of doing our little rant. Oh, it came in a very pretty white Jobbers box, which I kind of like. The last one came in a bag, so I thought that was odd. And it's got the little barcode on it telling me it's a part, and it looks very much like something I would get from a Canadian Tire store. There's no little warranty card or anything that comes with it. I don't think this one's a product of China. I don't think that they incorporate that into their marketing, because I don't think they try and capture you as a client. Whereas when you go to Canadian Tire or any of the little independent guys that sell parts, I think they try and get you in and say, okay, well, there's a 1-year warranty on it. This is kind of, they say that, but I think once you get it in the car, she's yours, right? So if it works, it works. So this one, I did open the box, and I want to see if there's an actual part inside, because strangely enough, aluminum, surprisingly light. So what's that little plastic part? Let's have a little look. So it looks like they gave me a little seal that goes there. Maybe it worked itself loose in shipping, so it's kind of wrapped around the part. So that's not exciting, because sometimes these get crimped and they can cause a problem. But let's see, it's going nice and tightly. It does, and it's even got a little spot, a little tab that shows you that it's incorrect. So there we go. It's a little wobbly, but that'll work. We'll tighten that down real good. Not too ecstatic about that one, but there we go. Looks good. It's got the little hose release off to the side here. So that's the GM proprietary coolant hose, which I'm going to tell you, I've pulled twice off so far. Not impressed with that one. What a proprietary design, I'm going to assume, from General Motors. It fits on, and there's a little locking ring that kind of clicks it in place. Let's see, where we go. You can kind of see where that little locking ring is, but it is a bear to get that hose over, and on that little fixture that they've got that locks it in. The other one is it doesn't fill you with confidence when you look at it and kind of go, okay, probably going to hold. I'm sure it's engineered for that. But on an older car where the hoses have expanded a little bit, or maybe there's a little bit of wear, or the plastic isn't exactly mint or brand new, having a hose clamp right there just to make sure as a backup is probably what I'm going to do. Again, it's just because maybe I'm a traditionalist in that sense, but this does fill me with a degree of not the best design in the world. And I get it, there's an elbow, and maybe they're having a hard time getting a form-fitted hose to do that 45, and then it goes up to a 90, and then it back up. All right, so I understand that. It's probably a design issue, or someone with AutoCAD and a 3D printer back in the day thought to themselves, well, this would be cool. Let's make it look like a corkscrew. I don't know. So if you're the designer of a Cruze and you're kind of going, Keith, there's a reason why we did that. It's not a proprietary part where we charge you extra money because it's an exclusive component you can only get from General Motors. It's because it does it better. So maybe that's the case. But I don't know. So there's that little preheater that's been giving me such a problem right there. And you can see on this design, it's removable. So you can buy the part down the road if this becomes faulty again. And again, I'm of the opinion that the plastic component, because it's molded in, because the plastic expands and contracts as this little puppy gets hot and cold. Also, the range, in which it works within, I think, is so sensitive that it causes a problem that we pulled the pretty little cover off. So that's kind of cool. So this is well presented. Like I think this is a beautiful part for $40. I think it was 47. I have to look at the billing, but I think this is an excellent value, and it's got the little spot right there. I should do this for the additional hose, which the other ones didn't have. So that's nice. And again, this one is a fitting, and then it's got a little, would you believe, a hose clamp. So maybe they were just trying to balance off and give you two different variations or two different options. So we'll see how that works. And it is just a standard, good old-fashioned spring-loaded thermostat on the inside. So this is where you've taken old technology. Okay, and I get that. This is very tried and true. This is one of my, it is one of the preferred ways of making sure that your cooling system is functional. This little guy right here, because usually when it fails in an open position, which means that you're not going to have the engine overheat. Now, I've been looking at some of the things in the forum, which I find funny, is that apparently these little tabs right here get deformed or melt, and what happens is sometimes it'll fail in the locked position, which again, hats off to you for designing a product that would blow up an engine. But again, I digress. Maybe the internet is just shooting flames up to say, hey, the one that did it or the two that did it. But again, it seems pretty common on that plastic part to have issues. So if you're out there and you're doing the shopping for your Cruze and you're saying to yourself, it's time for one of these, spend the extra $15 and get yourself an aluminum one. Yeah, I know I like it, and it's something that you can impress your neighbors with and say, look how shiny it is, how pretty that new part is. They did a nice job. It's got a little matte finish to it, polished. You know what? For the $40, this is pretty impressive. And I realize, because my background is automation, that in all likelihood, this was done by a robot. So it's probably not some little guy in China doing the assembly on this. He's not pressing this part in. He's not forming this, and he's not casting that part. It's literally done by an automated system. So this is where you can pop out these parts for, a third of what the General Motors would charge for the plastic version. So this is where we have to talk about competitiveness when it comes to assembly and building components. The labor to make this, now it's gone automated, and you have robots and you have technology that can do it, and it's been doing it for a very long time now. Bringing back jobs for this type of component, and again, I am in automotive assembly. Very, very, very hard to say, well, let's be competitive in a market that's already established. In the Chinese area, which we've used as a kind of a globalist type deal, they've moved to building and assembling parts, and they do that very, very efficiently. Now, are they great parts? You know what? You hear a lot of things in the trade about, a Chinese part, or even online, about them being inferior, and there's issues with them. When you're looking at something that's done by an automated system and done by, again, it'll do 1,000 parts the exact same way. When you go and do retooling, or you kind of change up something where you've got to switch this out, or you've got to change a component midway through because it's a different part. Yeah, I think that there's some issues with that, like on a first run, like a quality control issue. But to the most part, the stuff that I've received from Chinese manufacturing has been what I describe on par with the expectation associated with the pricing that I've paid for it. Now, I've worked on a broad range of cars in the past. So it's one of those things where Chinese parts or secondary or third source suppliers have become almost the norm, with the exception of certain brands which really block this. But I think what happens is you see this is just the changing times that's been around for about 10 years so far. The Chinese parts and the pricing associated with it, you just can't compete from that standpoint in North America without a huge outlay and saying, okay, well, let's put an automated cell in. Let's get some robots building parts. But then again, it's robots building parts. It does keep people employed, but it's not at the same level the 1970s and 1980s, when you went and looked at General Motors, and you went to Oshawa, and you saw these great big giant warehouses, and you saw these great big giant plants popping out bits and pieces and car components and all the offshoots. And if you ever drive through Oshawa, which I guess would be like the Canadian version of Detroit, Hamilton's very much like that, you'll see acres and acres and acres of foundations that once were General Motors production, because most of it has moved off to, well, some of it's become simple in its construction too. So they've deleted a lot of stuff that maybe in a car isn't really there anymore. A lot of it is component based, right? So it's one of those things that I look at, and again, I'm ranting there, so hopefully you enjoy that. So I'm going to install that today. So that's going to be fun. Again, because I've done it twice, I now have it almost down to a science where it's like boom, 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 done. So I'm going to get that installed, and hopefully that clears that engine code. Sensor on the back has already been replaced. So again, that was an $11 item or something like that. It came like weeks ago. But again, that's the sensor is just literally like a clip, 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 clip. You're good to go. At least on mine was. On this one, again, with the thermostat and the housing and the preheater that's there, $47 for Amazon. I'll leave the clip. Well, no, I'll leave the link down below. And the other one is I will give a little review on it, as far as, I'm not going to do the install video because there's a lot of them out there, but I'll leave a link to an install video so you get an idea what it is, kind of filtered out for you. The other one is in a couple weeks, I'll give a little review and say, hey, it seems to be holding up well. Again, that particular vehicle, I'm on the fence post with it, to be honest with you, as far as putting into Turo. Again, because I'm going through all these little items, kind of checklist. And it's one of those things where so far it seems to lead to additional work. So I'll do this, and then next thing you know, I'll be pulling the tires and checking the brakes. I'm not mystified about the brakes. There's nothing unusual about that. There's a lot of little bits and pieces in that car that I've got to go through because there are known issues, and just make sure they're okay. And if it becomes where I kind of go, okay, well, I understand why the car's been sold, I might go, well, maybe I'll fix it and put it up for sale. And because I don't want a maintenance driven car where I've got to be working on it consistently. But at the same time, I've been going through the vehicle, and other than some quirky little things associated with cooling system and their emissions controls are just abstract as far as how they're designed, and the materials they've used is a little weird. But I'm going through that and just kind of going, okay, that's good. So we'll see where that goes, which kind of leads me to another discussion, which I think is probably going to come up shortly, is why I picked the cars I've picked. And maybe we'll get into like the top 5 key picks for Turo cars and go from there. So that's basically what I've been doing. Again, this is the live stream that I put together, and then I just post it back up as a video content. Again, I was thinking this was going to be more of a blog down the road, or not a blog, but a podcast down the road, maybe a blog too, because I did that with the last series I did. But so I've been really focused on the Yeti mic, making sure the audio levels are reasonable and things along that line to be able to move it to a podcast. Again, it's one of those things where I haven't spent a lot of time and energy in the shooting of the video, so I do apologize for that. And I do try to keep this stuff around the 30-minute mark, just so that you get an idea of, okay, I've only got to invest X amount of time. And today we've talked about CAA, the membership benefits, why I choose it over the other ones that are out there in the marketplace. Talked a little bit about the little Chinese parts that have come in from Amazon, and pretty impressed by that, other than the hunt for them, which I think is an Amazon warehouse issue when it comes to cataloging components and listing compatibility and which ones go with which cars. So I think that's not necessarily an Amazon problem, but maybe it's the seller's input. Again, there could be something lost in translation there, but that one looks to be correct. So we'll throw that one in. Again, that's where I'm at right now. So I do appreciate it. If you can subscribe, that would be wonderful. It's your little PBS moment. I actually prefer when someone does a little like, or when they send a comment, because it seems to feed the channel a little more. So if you're out there and you're on Turo and you say to yourself, hey, Keith, that's not the best part. Maybe that's I like that feedback. Or maybe you go, you know what? I've had that one in from Amazon, and it's been pretty decent in comparison to the OEM component. It's an improvement, a step up, and that resolves some of the reliability issues associated with that component. I would love that if you got some feedback as far as that's concerned. I do check the little reviews as far as when I buy parts. So I only really buy something that's got maybe 5 or 6 down there and that look like they've actually been done by a person and not an AI Autobot kind of out there doing its thing. So I also look for photos. Sometimes that's tough. That one had a photo of it, which I like because I could go, oh, that's the part I'm looking for. So again, if you're out there and you're doing Amazon reviews, because I like to do them myself, especially on a part that's hard to come across or it'd be problematic, please include a photo. It's very helpful for someone out there working on their car. The other one that I would probably talk about is, I think on the next 30-minute little live chat we'll talk about vehicle selection. I think that'll be an interesting topic. And we'll go from there. I haven't gone ahead and added the Cruze yet to Turo. So we'll probably go ahead and run that and show you how to put it in and how to do description and basically the starting point on that car. Right now, it's been a couple of days of I've had to work, and so that takes a good chunk of time out. I've had some stuff to do with family over the weekend, so that took some time out as well. So hopefully this weekend I've got a block of time where I can say, okay, well, let's get underway and start doing things as I was describing as steps to be able to get you up and running and show you how to do Turo. Again, I'm learning myself, and we'll go from there. Again, thank you very much for checking out my videos. I do appreciate it. And again, PBS moment. Please go ahead and subscribe to my channel, because as soon as I hit that 1,000 mark, I can start taking some ad revenue, which would be wonderful, and buying something like perhaps a better quality camera. I know you're probably loving my Pixel 3 in-car shots. I know it's nice and all that, but it would be nice to have a little money tucked aside to say, okay, well, now I can move up to the Pixel 5. I'm not talking a new phone. I don't think when we get to that 1,000 subscribers and we start seeing a little revenue coming in, and I might be wrong, maybe I am, but I think it's going to be things for helping the channel. In other words, building it a little more, putting that whatever comes in to things like maybe a nicer set of gear to be able to say, okay, well, we've got that done. I'm never going to replace this Blue Yeti mic. It's pretty amazing. It's a vintage piece. Well, it's not, but it's old. Like, it's one of those things where that was $60 off Kijiji, I think 4 years ago, but it seems to work really well, and podcast stuff loves it. So again, that's not going to go anywhere. However, I might get one of those cool little hanging things where you put it up and you kind of, that would make me feel very much like a radio guy. So again, we're kind of going into the babble of what I would do with the tens of dollars, I think, of YouTube money that would help promote and build a nicer studio and a better space related to YouTube, among other visual, I guess, platforms out there. And if you're out there, and this is one of those things I'd love to get a feedback on, and we're getting a little longer in time. If you're running a YouTube channel and you kind of go, Keith, this is funny, like, because you're probably into it going, well, that's hilarious. But if you're in there and you kind of going, oh my God, please stop doing that. I would love to have the feedback. And I know a lot of folks go, I don't want to hear negative comments. I'm not talking negative comments. I'm talking about, hey, you can say, I've used this particular camera and it works great, and it's a valued item, and it's a good item to get into. I'd appreciate that. The other one is, if you're saying to yourself, you know what, you're doing a straight shot, you're not really doing editing, and I'm not, because of time restraints. If you say, well, there's a service that does that, this is where you should go. Or if you're saying to yourself, you know what, it's not bad for what it is and the effort that's put into it, appreciate it. And it's, again, it's one of those things I'm looking at it from. I've gone to YouTube videos for information. I would like to give back a little bit from that and say, okay, well, this is my input. This is where I've been, and this is where I'm going. So some of the stuff I've watched has been pretty horrible, especially with audio. And that's the one thing I wanted to focus on, was getting a good audio package. Mainly because when you're out there and you're doing a little work on a car, or you're doing something around your space, particularly at work, you'll end up stumbling across something that you kind of go, oh, I don't understand what that is completely. And then you do a little boop, 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 right? And you kind of go, okay, well, there's that search engine kicking in. And I've been using AI a lot, which is really helpful from that standpoint. Really takes that I don't know what I'm talking about to a whole new level. Just putting that out there. It's fun. So it's one of those things where I thought, well, you know what? The little information and knowledge that I have, which is just a little, I will try and put out there. And maybe that'll help the next person out. He'll go, okay, well, I watched that guy, which seemed to be pretty straightforward and legitimate. No side effects. Like I'm not trying to give you like I'm not sponsored by Turo. I don't have a parts supplier sponsoring me. I don't have any real influence to say, hey, do it or don't. I'm just telling you that this is what I've done and this is how it works. And so far it's been pretty decent. And I kind of like that because I'm going to tell you, like, for instance, I've had 2 parts come back from Amazon that were wrong, but, stayed with it. It took me an extra week to get the right part, but at some point it was resolved. I still have a return that's due. So I've got it boxed up and it's meant to go over to, hey, maybe I'll do a whole video on that. That sounds exciting. It's meant to go over to Amazon and it's the return. So again, things that happen on a daily, right? So again, I hope you enjoyed it. We're at pause. We're at the end of the video. So again, if you've managed to listen to this whole thing, thank you very much. Have a pleasant and enjoyable day. Ooh, let's go in stream. See ya. Not yet. Hit the button. We're hitting the button. Button's hit. End.